Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Malachi's Message Toxic Mold Sucks podcast. I'm Elizabeth Kreid, co-founder and executive director of Malachi's Message. Co-hosting today is Emily Rochelle. She's the co-founder and currently serves as our board chair. Today, we have the privilege of interviewing Kealy again. We are so excited. This is one of the guests that we really asked to come back. Her information and her insight and her wisdom is critical, and we think that people need to hear from her. Kealy is a toxic mold survivor, holds a master's degree in Oriental Medicine, nutrition, and acupuncture, is an environmentally acquired injury specialist offering special health and consultations and herbal formulations for those who have been mold injured. She's also the founder and president of Exposing Mold. Kealy, thank you for coming back on and doing a second interview with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Elizabeth.
Kealy, can you explain what is acupuncture so people understand what that is and what are the benefits?
Sure. Acupuncture is the sterilized insertion of acupuncture needles on acupuncture points. And the primary benefit is regulating the nervous system or the body's electrical system, really just balancing out the body. It can reduce pain, it can reduce anxiety, it can help balance really so many different symptoms. There's really no limits to how acupuncture can support the body. So if there was an injury that was like a structural injury, like it can't mend a broken bone, or it can't cure scoliosis where like that structure is off. But in terms of wandering joint pain or muscle pain or inflammation, it can really do a number in reducing those symptoms. And I always say you have to get the dose right. You can't just go to your acupuncturist and have like one or two treatments and think a chronic pain problem is going to completely go away. Just like you wouldn't take one pill of metformin and think your diabetes was under control.
What made you get into acupuncture?
That's a great question. I had only had one acupuncture experience prior to deciding to go into acupuncture school, and it was actually years prior, like 8 or 9 years prior. I was actually supposed to get a massage, and the masseuse was booked up, so they like fit me in with the acupuncturist just to not cancel my appointment. And what happened afterwards was so profound that it stuck in my memory. I didn't know at that time that I had like anxiety and mood symptoms from a long-term mold exposure. So I wouldn't have described myself as an anxious person at that time. But after my first acupuncture appointment, I was so relaxed. Like I had never been that relaxed in my life. Excuse me. And I kept annoying everybody by walking around after my treatment and saying how relaxed I was. Like, I'm so relaxed. I've never been this relaxed. And so fast forward to years later, I had finished my philosophy degree and I was actually still waitressing. And I was like, I don't have a career in philosophy. I want to go back to school to something that I can have a career in. And I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to help people. I wanted to dictate my schedule. I wanted to be in control of what that job would be. And I thought back to that acupuncture experience and how amazing I felt after that. And I thought, oh my gosh, I could learn this and help people in that same way. And the second I had that thought, that realization, I literally had goosebumps down to my bones, like inside my bones, and every cell inside my body was like, this is what you're doing next. And I literally changed my whole entire life around in just a matter of months. I mean, I put my notice in at my job. I found the closest acupuncture school. I made plans to move. I mean, I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I've been waiting to figure out. This is the next thing. Let's do it. And we just dove in and I never looked back.
So I love your passion behind it. And I remember the first time my doctor, who I love, told me that as part of my healing journey from mold, she said, well, we have an acupuncturist in office. You should really start seeing too. And I remember telling my husband, and the look on his face at the time was like, that is way too crunchy and like, voodoo witch doctor magic. Like, why is somebody going to shove needles into me? That's Chinese torture. And I remember thinking, okay, I need to look into this more because there are I feel like so many misconceptions around what acupuncturists do and what the purpose is and how it actually helps your body. And I think I just listened to all the stereotypes before I actually looked into it. So can you kind of walk people through how it's beneficial? What are some of the stereotypes or misconceptions? Probably misconceptions. If you could walk people through what some of those are and answer them or clear them up, that would be great.
I think a common misconception of acupuncture is that it's like a woo-woo medicine, kind of like how you just described. And
Yeah.
I think modern medicine does a little bit to propagate that. I know that there's like an acupuncture page on Quackwatch basically calling acupuncture a scam. They kind of mock the diagnostic process by saying like, oh, they're regulating chi, the mystical force inside your body. And what we have to remember is, chi is our body's electrical system. And look at how much we're seeing our body's electrical systems misfiring in a toxic mold exposure. So the electrical system isn't really acknowledged by Western medicine. They don't treat, it's not like you're going to get diagnosed with an ion channelopathy or something really wrong with your electrical system that they're going to give you a medication for. And so I think some of the terminology surrounding how we talk about acupuncture as acupuncturists contributes. I think some of the Western misconceptions about what acupuncture is and what it does, that contributes to the lack of understanding. And then it's also always going to struggle to go really mainstream when it's not something that like every doctor offers or that your insurance covers indefinitely forever, because people pay so much monthly for insurance that they don't necessarily want out of pocket costs. And I think that mental block of like, well, I want the care that my insurance covers. And then when acupuncture is only maybe 10 to 12 sessions, maybe if you're lucky enough to get covered in your plan, that doesn't really make it like a priority for a treatment. And so I think those are the factors that contribute to it not being well understood and to it not being widely accepted.
Why do you think it should be more accepted? Why do you think this is something that people, especially going through mold, should be looking at like more concretely, I guess, and with more of a focus?
I love that question because I always say like, it's not about saying which medicine is superior or which medicine is best, but it's knowing the place to use each medicine. Like if I have a UTI, I might try herbs for a day or two, but if that doesn't clear up, I'm going to get antibiotics. So I think understanding the role of acupuncture of when it should be tried. Obviously before, if you don't want to be on medications, and especially if you don't want to be on opiates, and especially if you don't want a surgery, that should be a part of an ongoing pain treatment plan to avoid those things. People might get a handful of sessions and say like, well, that didn't cure my chronic pain problem. But if you think about it as like taking a dose of Tylenol to manage the pain, you might need ongoing management.
Is it safe for children to do? Do children do?
It's not contraindicated in terms of like licensure and scope of practice, but overall, kids do not like to be needled. And you're going to, in general, make children feel unsafe. And so what I do with pediatrics is mostly explain to mamas typically how to maybe massage some acupuncture points to ease like digestion or upset tummy or a headache maybe. Or they also have laser pens where you can use like an LED light laser to stimulate the acupuncture point. And those are pretty gentle, and you can make some progress just with acupuncture and laser stimulation on the points. And I find kids are way more comfortable than that. Kids are kind of freaked out by needles, except mine are weird. 2 of my kids love acupuncture. When I was like navigating probably my hardest year of like getting through my sensitivities when we had first left mold, I had done acupuncture on myself almost every day to kind of just balance out my immune system and like slow down my reactions and really calm my emotional system because I was so hyper responding to everything. And they got so used to seeing me with needles and they're like, can we have acupuncture? Can we have acupuncture? So I'll use like the really tiny facial needles on them that are like way thinner than what you would use for like an adult regular treatment. But in general, I do find that acupuncture is not a great fit for kids.
Hmm. How have you seen it help people? Like how in your practice have you seen it? Yeah, seen it help people.
And also, Keely, how many sessions do you think, like on average, people need to have just in general? I'm sure it varies from what they're suffering from, but kind of about, is there like an average?
Well, Elizabeth, to answer your question, I've seen it help people by reducing pain, improving mood, strengthening the immune system, really any chronic healthcare condition that, like I said, isn't like a structural or a genetic. And when I say genetic, I mean like a genetic like retardation or a genetic, like very clearly you were born with this genetic condition. That's not what it's going to fix. Any other condition, just across the board, autoimmune, mood, pain, and there's so many different categories of all of those. I have seen improvement in terms of reduction in symptoms, improved quality of life. So I haven't really seen a condition that it's not supporting for, except what I kind of mentioned.
Have you seen it help anybody with like mast cell?
Well, it really can reduce the histamine reactions, but what I've seen with this is people who are still, so I've seen it go both ways. I've seen it reduce histamine responses, absolutely, but I've also seen people with mast cell who are continuously exposed to triggers that trigger their mast cell, that they can't cut them out because they won't acknowledge that it's part of the process. And so then I'm like, always, you're just working against the exposure at that point.
Yeah.
So if you're doing something to balance the immune system and reduce histamine issues that supports mast cell, and then they're going home and they're wiping their face with a towel that was like in their moldy house that's definitely contaminated, then they're like itchy all over their face. And then they're like, well, I have histamine issues. And you can't, some patients aren't open to that conversation, even if you try to have it, and some patients are. So
Yeah.
the results are always limited by that also.
Do you, because I know several people kind of in, the functional medicine field, but when people are doing that and they're working against their exposure, do you just kind of fire them as a client? Because I know some of my functional doctor friends have.
Absolutely not. And the reason why is I've had patients who, for example, at my last clinic, I'm at a clinic now that I don't own. I'm just there part-time. But when I was in practice full-time and I did own my clinic, a lot of my patients were local farmers. And they're living in dairy farm houses that were inherited 3 generations ago. And their lives are dairy farmers. And they're not leaving their house and quitting their farm and giving up everything because their basement floods every spring. They're just not. But they will come consistently every week for treatment and stay on their herbs from October to February to prevent themselves from getting farmer's lung. Because like one patient in particular, I'm thinking in referencing this, before I met her, she hadn't gone like a winter, you okay? She hadn't gone a fall and winter season without a serious hospitalized lung infection in over 10 years. And when I started treating her, she hadn't gone to the hospital at all. So we got her through 3 winters of no hospitalization. And the only thing she did was put in a second sub pump, added a industrial dehumidifier to kind of mitigate moisture, but that's all she could do for her house. She wasn't going to change her exposure or do decon or do anything. She just came every single week for acupuncture, and then we had her on really high doses of specific herbs for lung function during her sensitive time, and that's how we got her through. So it's like you have to meet the patient where they're at. And I might not want to work with somebody who's being super aggressive or disrespectful or threatening to me. But if a patient is just limited in terms of what they could do, I still want to always be able to support where they're at if I can. But you have to be so clear in expectations, because you can't represent that as a complete cure. At least for me, I can't. I want to be really honest of like, well, we're always going to be working against this, but maybe we can at least keep you out of the hospital. where I'm kind of indicating to them, like, this isn't ideal, but this is your situation. So let's make it the best that we can.
I love that. So you're still supporting them.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to let people fall through the cracks or be hospitalized every winter because they're not going to leave their dairy farm? I mean, you can't do that to people, not as a healthcare provider. I mean, I understand from the functional medicine side of like, I mean, I guess I understand because you're going to get a really bad reputation as a doctor if people are just piling through and like they're not making changes with the mold. But maybe it's because I had a smaller practice where I was like much more intimate with my patients. But yeah, I don't think you can turn your back on patient care if there is a way that you can honestly help them and support them and improve their quality of life. You have a duty to do it as a healthcare provider, in my opinion.
So how does acupuncture does it fit in the same world as herbal medicine?
Chinese medicine has 8 pillars, which is like 8 focuses of Chinese medicine, and 2 of them are acupuncture and herbal medicine. So it all fits under the scope of a licensed provider of Oriental medicine or Eastern medicine.
I have to say again that the first time my doctor, who's also studied Chinese medicine, I guess, the first time I met her, she's a little Russian lady, and she looked at me and goes, "Stick out your tongue." And I was like, "What?" And she looks at my tongue and like straight diagnoses me. And then my mom was there, and bless her heart, because she's taken me to almost all my appointments out of state. She looked at my mom's tongue and she goes, "Let me see your tongue." And my mom, like the third appointment, and goes, "I don't want to go anymore. I don't want her to look at my hair or my tongue or my eyes or how my face is breaking out. Like, she's going to tell me exactly what's wrong with me." And I just laughed, and I'm like, it's amazing though. And I know that's not like the entire scope of it, but it was my first experience with anybody that had studied Chinese medicine. And I was going, wow, I feel like our Western society is missing something, because if you can look at my body in its natural state and start to see what it's lacking, like that should be square one for everybody right now, I feel like, instead of just working with the symptoms. So I think it's incredible when you said that you worked with and you studied Chinese medicine. I automatically was intrigued and was a fan of you. Even before we met you, I was like, this is a good person. Like, they're willing to look at the body and see what's going on in the body and not just look at the symptoms, which I think is so important.
Yeah, observation, which is what you're mentioning, them observing your tongue. That's actually one of the ways that we diagnose in Chinese medicine. So, like, diagnostics are different. We don't need testing. We can collect a sheet of symptoms and kind of tell which organs are out of balance. We can feel the pulse and look at which organs are out of balance. We can look at the tongue and see what fluids and organs and pathologies are out of balance. And that's part of the training of Chinese medicine, is learning the diagnostics and then being able to make sense of that in a patient presentation to support their body with herbs and acupuncture.
This may be a question you already answered, but my dog was misbehaving, so I didn't hear something that you said earlier. Herbal medicine, what is it? Did you answer that?
No, I didn't. Herbal
No.
medicine is, so basically it's not, herbal medicine isn't used how I see healthcare providers like naturopathic doctors or functional medicine doctors using herbal medicine. They'll take like one herb, like milk thistle is a good example. Like milk thistle has a reputation of being a liver herb. So it's like, oh, well, take this for your liver. That's not how Chinese medicine is practiced when you're a licensed herbalist for Chinese medicine. It's really taking like a full collection of data from the patient, looking at the symptoms, the health history, the tongue and pulse, as Elizabeth had mentioned, and then fitting that into what's called a pattern. And a pattern can be like one or more organ dysfunctions. And then what's treated is the pattern of organ dysfunction that's diagnosed. And so each pattern or variation of pattern has like a specific herbal formula. And so sometimes single herbs are used, but more often than not, herbs are used in a formula where it's like if one herb's a little drying, but it is really good at tackling this. It's really good at tackling pathogens and breaking down biofilm, but it might be a little drying. And so that's balanced with an herb that's like slightly moistening. And that's kind of the balance of the formula, is where one herb might do this and it might do it a little too well. And so the formula will be balanced. And so there's herbs that do different things to kind of work for that full pattern. But even herbal medicine, just like acupuncture, is going to be limited in efficacy based on really the provider, but also the condition. You're never going to fully acupuncture or herbal medicine your way out of a toxic mold exposure without addressing the environment.
I mentioned last time we spoke, it was when we weren't doing the recording, but you helped one of our very good friends, Jennifer, with your herbal teas. Did you go through a process of trying to figure out which teas she might like that would help the pain that she was in? Because she called me afterwards and she was like, oh my God, these teas are amazing. Like my pain has been reduced.
Yeah, so she had scheduled a consult with me, and her description of her symptoms was a pretty general pattern that didn't take a ton of deciphering. And so I had a pretty good idea of which herbal formula to start her on. And sometimes it's a little hit and miss, especially when you're working with someone new and kind of like figuring out like how their body best responds. But hers was kind of clear, and yeah, she had a really great response to those herbs, and I was happy I was able to help her.
So we talked, I know last time off camera too, with that conversation, you were telling us that one thing doesn't fit all though, right? With herbal medicine. So one tea for somebody might not work or might be dangerous for somebody else.
That's such a good point. Thank you for mentioning that, because what I gave her wasn't a pain tea. It was a tea that actually helps like drain fluid retention and clear out the kidneys. And so when you're draining off excess fluid and improving the health of the organs, that can reduce pain. I mean, if you have fluid accumulation in your joints and wandering pain, taking that fluid, that pressure off the body, that can help reduce pain. And so it's not that everyone with arthritis would do great with this formula. Absolutely not. It has to be, you have to take into consideration how their kidneys are filtering. If there's what we call like damp blocking the kidneys, which is a Chinese medical terminology to say like the kidneys aren't filtering water well, and there's clues of that in terms of like fluid retention or swelling or wandering pain or shorter urination or incomplete urination or past history of stones. And then at that point, you want to kind of clear out the kidneys. And so it's not even a pain formula, but when the body is so out of balance, that just goes to tell you how many different causes of pain there are. You can have pain from fluid retention, and that's not even discussed or talked about or acknowledged in any form of medicine.
I learned about fluid retention after mold. I developed, and I didn't even know about this. I was having severe pain in my knees. Like it hurt to walk. And it was my massage therapist who caught it. She's like, you have cysts back here. And I forgot the name she named it. And sure enough, there were on both in the back, there were 2 cysts. And so when they finally burst and the fluid, and then I got a lot of pain in my calves when they burst. But yeah, it caused me a ton of pain with the fluid.
Yeah.
So people shouldn't just be Googling what is the best Chinese medicine treatment for such and such.
I mean, they can. And then if they want to do that, they're just going to turn around and say that Chinese medicine doesn't work, because you can't self-prescribe. I mean, even when I needed help dialing in my herbs, I went to somebody that I trust, because it's a joke in Chinese medicine that you can diagnose others, but you can't diagnose yourself. It's like when you're trying to figure it out for yourself, everything just kind of blends together. But she put her purple pajamas on for you guys.
You're so cute.
Just seeing which one should I wear for this day.
She was just
Aw.
seeing which one she should wear for this day.
Oh, which is beautiful. I love the purple ones.
They're very nice.
We would like to take a quick break and thank one of our tier 1 corporate sponsors. The Mold Medics franchising was created to provide consumer-focused solutions to indoor air quality problems in a way that no other company currently offers. Their unique services and protocols allows them to help clients suffering from mold-related illnesses by resolving the issues in their environment. Mold Medics stretches far beyond the traditional mold remediation space, helping consumers with a range of other services, including radon testing and other allergen treatment options. Mold Medics is currently looking for prospective franchises to open across the US and helping them fight against mold and environmental problems. To learn more, you can go to www.moldmedics.com.
So Kealy, when somebody's looking for a good herbalist, what are some of the things that they should look for in an herbalist?
That's a good question.
Wow, that's a hard one to answer because
If their name's not Kealy, then they're not a good herbalist.
I almost think like, do some homework on the person that you want to work with and have the set of questions ready to interview the healthcare provider. I think it comes down to too many people are like approaching doctors or healthcare providers in terms of like wanting to be saved. And I feel like we can just have like a little bit more control over our health in terms of saying like write out your list. Like, what are your requirements from a provider? Like, do you want them to show you testimonials? Do you want to know if their results with other clients with your similar health issues? Like, write out a list of questions and then ask, like, can I have a consult with you to ask you these questions, and like really feel out your provider. Ask them about their herbal training and kind of get comfortable with how they prescribe for herbs. I don't want to really throw anyone under the bus in terms of like herbal prescriptions, but I definitely found out after graduating from high school, from herbal medicine school, that everything that I had learned in practice wasn't really applicable. Everything I had learned in practice at school I should say, wasn't really applicable for practice. So for an example, in school we're kind of taught that night sweating can be from a fluid deficiency, but it can also be from the body retaining fluid. And so if someone hasn't kind of really explored herbs postgraduate, I would say, ask about the training they received in their herbal medicine postgraduate, because that's where you kind of do continuing education credits and get a lot more in-depth info. Some of the stuff that you learn right in school is like, you just have to pass that exam, but then it doesn't translate well to practice. So really like interviewing your provider about the things that are important to you and kind of, diving into the ways that they can help you. And if someone's like too egotistical to answer your questions or gives you answers that don't feel like they're a good fit, then just use your discernment. And also, I can treat people from a distance, so give me a call if you want.
I was actually just about to ask that. So good that you. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to consult with you and have you be their herbalist?
There's 2 ways that I work with people. I volunteer my time to the memberships of Exposing Mold. So people who have platinum memberships, which I think is currently like $179 a month. They're in our membership program with all of our free classes, and then they also get consult time monthly. That's the most cost-effective way to have access to me. I also do offer just private one-on-one consults outside of Exposing Mold. And the link to that is, you can get on that schedule just from the Exposing Mold website, and the link is also on, I think, my Facebook profile.
Okay. And your Facebook profile, is it just Kealy Severson?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
I'll include that then.
And what if they want to come in and see you, because you work at part-time at a practice, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if someone's local to where I am in Wisconsin, they can email me and I can give out my clinic name. It's a clinic in Wales, Wisconsin, where I practice part-time in the evenings.
I really want to try acupuncture. I've heard great things about that. My husband did that growing up, and he absolutely loved it.
Oh, Cheryl Harding, the Stachybotrys researcher, she told us in our interview that regular acupuncture was the one thing that like kept her from really tipping over the scales in her hypersensitivity. That, she had a little of exposure in her career, and that was one thing that she just did religiously long term, and she said that it really helped her. When you think about all the ways mold exposure can affect your electrical system, and then all the ways acupuncture can support your electrical system, it's just amazing as an adjunct therapy.
Well, thank you. This is a topic people need to know about, especially since so many people going through mold are trying to find more, like, for lack of a better term, because it's overused, natural ways of supporting their body and not just simply giving themselves another drug. Like we said, there's no magic pill. So finding ways to support your body naturally is a big deal. Thank you so much.
Thank you.